Ranking Member Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to finish Professor Yadav's point on disclosures, having sold mutual funds in a past life, I will say that having a prospectus that the average person can understand would be really helpful. The truth of the matter is disclosure sounds great until you try to read a prospectus and you can't figure out what in the world it says. So I think plain English would be very helpful for the vast majority of our folks who are first-time investors to understand what it is that they're investing in. And I would say without any question, this is an area where that is really important because of the complexity of the actual underlying asset itself. Right now, the United States has the strongest and most enviable capital markets in the world. The reason for this is a very simple reason. The sun never sets on American innovation. Over decades, we have fostered a financial environment that has decreased poverty, increased homeownership, and made the American dream a reality for more and more of our citizens. Our goal should not be any different when it comes to digital assets. Our aim should be to provide rules of the road that are clear, consistent, and most importantly, foster an environment that rewards opportunity while ensuring consumers are informed and protected against fraud and deception. As we speak here, several countries across the globe are creating their own framework to address the rise of cryptocurrency. Unfortunately, our regulators have muddied the waters. We have been told everything from we need legislation to more recently that regulators have the tools they need to supervise this industry. That is quite a flip-flop. Once again, it is really important that we have Chair Gensler here before September. It is far too far in the future for us to wait that long before we hear from Chairman Gensler. The regulators have permitted activity in this space without providing clear rules of the road, which has unfortunately led to the multiple failures that brings us here today. Let's be clear. Had the SEC provided anything besides hostility to the crypto industry, we may have been able to save investors from losing billions of dollars on FTX, Celsius, BlockFi, and the list goes on. So my question, Professor Jing, what should Congress keep in mind when it considers developing an approach to the crypto industry? How do we strike a balance between appropriate and thoughtful regulation and the tool of innovation that it could be?
Thank you, Senator, for that very important question. We are at a pivotal moment in history where the decisions that you all make as policymakers will affect how our economy grows in the future. And currently, we are becoming a data-driven digital economy. What does that mean? That means that our activities are increasingly based upon data and on blockchain technologies. So the kind of guardrails that you put in place now will affect generations to come. Many of the issues that you need to think about will include certainly consumer protection, but also consumer rights and consumer empowerment. Currently, there are countries around the world who are also looking at how to take advantage of crypto technologies, China being a good example. But in that situation, it's the government that wants to actually control the personal data. Here is an opportunity for you all to create the framework for consumer empowerment, for consumer data rights that serves as a foundation for a digital economy.
As I noted in my opening statement, innovation can be a positive driver in expanding access to traditional financial services and can foster new additional technologies that promote financial independence, access to credit, and capital formation. It is astounding what financial innovation can do for people when they are given the ability to make their own choices and allowed the flexibility to innovate. While we've talked about cryptocurrency a lot, innovation in the technology space is not limited to crypto. FinTech is another classic example of things that are moving in a positive direction. Question for the whole panel. Can you speak to the benefits you see for everyday Americans in the digital asset space and the need to ensure that regulation does not stifle innovation? Professor?
Great. Thank you so much, Senator Scott, for that question. Innovation here is something that is
moving extremely fast in terms of trying to improve the efficiency, for example, of the payment system. Now, one thing that is very clear in the US is that despite us having a state-of-the-art financial system, our payment system is lagging behind. And what we have seen, for example, in the context of fintech, is the ability to try and make payments much more usable. For example, using smartphone technology, for example, trying to have contactless payments. The world that we inhabited 10 years ago in terms of payments is not the world that we inhabit today. And yet there are still some problems. For example, if it, these are things that you've heard in this committee before. It takes time, days, in fact, for payments to settle. Checks take days in order to move. In addition, obviously, there are enormous costs involved with this. Now, this obviously leaves out folks that don't necessarily have a bank account and don't have access to the full panoply of financial services. So the question is, how do we make innovation work for people so that we're able to bring everyone into the fold in a much more inclusive and cheap and efficient way? Now, certainly some of the technologies that are being proposed, even in digital assets, are trying to do that. And so certainly that is something, a potential use case that could be worth exploring, provided that it is, substantively and properly regulated.
Thank you. Professor Jing?
Thanks, Senator Scott.
Let me hear from the professor real quick.
I'm sorry, I thought you were okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. So one of the very important issues to take into account is consumer rights and property rights. We need a clear set of rules. And what do I mean by that? My husband's from Ireland. When I'm in Ireland, I have to drive on the left side of the road. If I'm not told that, I would get into a car crash. Similarly here, we, as a professor looking at the system, there is an urgent need for a regulatory framework that clearly states what are the consumer rights and also what are responsibilities of crypto participants.